Welcome back to Convoke'd. My name is Ivan, and today we'll be going over the World Shaper Precon in the new Edge of Eternity set. Now we'll be sacrificing lands, and we'll be bringing them back stronger and better, as it says on the box. So this Precon out of the box seems really fun, which is one of the reasons why I picked it up. I usually don't pick up Precons unless the commander looks interesting and does something that isn't already done by a commander that is popular. And also, we get to run a vehicle in our command zone, which is something new to Magic with the new Edge of Eternity set. And after we break it down, we'll go over some potential adds for the deck. So let's go ahead and break down this deck. Alright, so here's the deck laid out, and we'll go over the cards one by one. Starting off with the face commander, we have Sazarel, Genesis Shepherd, green, red, black, and 2 generic. It is a 2/5 legendary creature insect druid with flying, and it allows you to play lands from your graveyard. When you sacrifice another non-token permanent during your turn, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to Sazarel's power and up to one other target creature. Now the other possible commander is, of course, Hearthhole, the World Seed. It is a green, red, black, and 1 generic for a legendary artifact spacecraft with the station ability. When it has 2 or more station counters, you can pay 1 to tap and sacrifice a land. You draw 2 cards, you may play an additional land this turn. When it has 8 or more, it becomes a creature with flying, vigilance, haste. It's a 6/7 and has, whenever you sacrifice a land, each opponent loses 2 life. Now, if you can tell by the difference in the sleeves, I'm of course going to run Hearthhole, mainly because I guess it's the first vehicle that I'll be running in the command zone, and it'll be interesting to see how it works. So let's move on to the other cards. Alright, I did want to highlight the new cards introduced to Commander with this deck. We have Exploration Brood Ship, which essentially allows us to play the lands, and then on each of our turns we can cast a permanent spell from our graveyard by sacrificing a land in addition to paying its other mana cost. Once it gets to 8+. Next we have Baelith Prime, which is essentially Rampaging Baelith. It enters with 6 stun counters and is a 10/10 for 4 mana, which is really crazy. And when we sacrifice a land, we create a 4/4 green beast creature token and untap this creature. And then we can pay 4 to sacrifice a land, and we gain 2 life. Next up is Avendo Brushrazor. It is a 2/2, and it reads, whenever you sacrifice a non-token permanent, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, as long as you sacrifice a non-token permanent this turn, you can play a card exiled with this creature. We can tap it as sacrifice land to add 2 red, which is pretty good. And this is probably my favorite card in this deck. It is Scouring Swarm. It has flying, and whenever we sacrifice a land, we create a tap token that's a copy of this creature if 7 or more lands are in our graveyard. Otherwise, we create a tap 1/1 black insect creature token with flying. This is essentially just Scute Swarm, but evil Scute Swarm in the sense that we need to have lands in our graveyard instead of lands coming into play. Next we have Horizon Explorer. Lands we control enter untapped, and whenever we attack a player, we create a lander token, which is a new token in this set, which essentially we pay 2 and tap it to find a basic land and put onto the battlefield tap. Next we have, Eumidian Wastewaker. When this creature attacks, you and defending player each discard a card or sacrifice permanent. You draw a card for each land card put into a graveyard this way. And has Encore. And finally, Planetary Annihilation. Each player chooses 6 lands they control, then sacrifices the rest. Then it deals 6 damage to each creature. So board wipe, plus kind of set the game back a little by getting rid of some lands. Alright, moving on to our ramp and card advantage that isn't tied to sacrificing lands or playing lands. We have Arcane Signet, of course, Sol Ring, 2 classics. We have Night's Whisper, draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. We got Harrow, which makes us sacrifice a land, and we search for 2 basic lands and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Then we have Escape the Wilds. We exile the top 5 cards of our library. We can play cards exiled this way until the end of turn, and we can play an additional land this turn. We have Spring Bloom Druid. When it enters, sacrifice a land. If we do, we search for up to 2 basic lands, put onto the battlefield tapped. Farseek, we search for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain, and put onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle. We have Oracle of Moldiah, which allows us to play additional lands on each of our turns. We can play the top cards of our library revealed, and you may play lands from the top of our library. Or sorry, it's not you may. You play with the top card of your library revealed. Next we have Skyshroud Claim. Search your library for up to 2 forest lands, put them onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Then we have Cultivate. We search for up to 2 basic lands, reveal them, put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into our hand. Nature's Lore, search for a forest card, put onto the battlefield tapped and shuffled. And Rolling Regrowth, where you sacrifice a land, search your library for up to 2 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So yeah, plenty of land sacrifice, which will trigger some of the next cards we'll be looking at. So let's go ahead and do that. Alrighty, so this pile is about cards that care about what lands enter into play or leave play. So we have Augur of Autumn. We can look at the top card of our library at any time. We can play lands from the top of our library. And as long as we control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you can cast creature spells from the top of your library. We have Morog, Fury of Occam. All right, so each creature we control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. Then on our landfall trigger, next we have Formless Genesis, which is a shapeshifter spell. It's a sorcery, and when we cast it, we create a XX colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling and Death Touch, where X is the number of land cards in our graveyard. As retrace, so we can cast this card from our graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to playing its other costs. So ways of getting more lands into our graveyards. Next we got Jury, Master of the Review. Whenever we sacrifice permanent, we put a +1/+1 counter on him. When he dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. We have Urg, Spawn of Turg. His power is equal to the number of land cards at our graveyard. At the beginning of our upkeep, we surveil one. We can pay a black and a green to sacrifice a land and gain 2 life. Next we have Loamcrafter Fawn. When this creature enters, you may discard 1 or more land cards. When you do, return up to that many target non-land permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Some nice recursion. Next we have Multani, Yamivaya's avatar. He has Reach, Trample, gets +1/+1 for each land we control, and each land card in our graveyard. We can pay a green and a colorless to return 2 lands we control to their owner's hand. Return this card from your graveyard to your hand. And of course, Rampaging Bailiff. As Trample, whenever a land we control enters, we create a 4/4 green beast creature token. Okay, next we have Tireless Tracker. As Landfall, whenever a land we control enters, we investigate. And whenever we sacrifice a clue, he gets a +1/+1 counter. Now we have Omnath, Locus of Rage. Whenever a land we control enters, he creates a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token. And when Omnath or another elemental you control dies, it deals 3 damage to any target. Next we have God Eternal Bontu. He has Menace. And when he enters, we sacrifice any number of other permanents, then draw that many cards. And when he dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, we may put it into our library 3rd from the top. Next we have Mazarik, Crawl Death Priest, flying. Whenever a player sacrifices another permanent, we put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. We have Corvold, Faker's King, he has flying. Whenever he enters or attacks, we sacrifice another permanent. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Corvold and draw a card. We have Braids, Arisen Nightmare. I love this card. At the beginning of our end step, we sacrifice a artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If we do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent of their choice that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. As a Gitrog monster, Death Touch, at the beginning of our upkeep, we sacrifice it unless we sacrifice a land. We can play additional lands on each of our turns, and whenever 1 or more land cards are put into the graveyard from anywhere, we draw a card. Next we have Satyr Wayfinder. When he enters, we reveal the top 4 cards of our library. We can put a land card among them into our hand and put the rest into the graveyard. All right, next we have Sprouting Goblin. He has Kicker for a green. And whenever he enters, if he was kicked, we search for a land with a basic land type, reveal it, put it into our hand, and shuffle. Then we can pay a red and tap to sacrifice a land to draw a card. Next we have Mayhem Devil. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, it deals 1 damage to any target. And now, I did make a change to this deck, which happens to be this Eldrazi. So Worldbreaker is devoid, and when we cast a spell, we exile target artifact, enchantment, or land. He has Reach, and can pay 2 and a colorless to sacrifice a land. If we do, we return this card from the graveyard to our hand. Now, I did switch this out because it is 7 mana, and its abilities aren't really that great. So I'll show you what I switched it to. I switched it to Ancient Green Warden, which has Reach, and we can play lands from our graveyards. If a land entering causes a triggered ability of a permanent we control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Right. Now moving on to our removal and border wipes. We have Blasphemous Act, which it costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, and then deals 13 damage to each creature. We have a Binding the Old Gods. So this is a saga. The first step, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Second, search our library for a forest card, put onto the battlefield, tap and shuffle. And then the third one, creatures we control gain Death Touch until end of turn. Infernal Grasp, destroy target creature, we lose 2 life. Terror Sunder, which has Kicker for 1 colorless, 1 black. We exile target artifact or enchantment. If the spell is kicked, exile target non-land permanent instead. Next we have Pest Infestation, where we pay for X twice, and then a green. We destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments. Then we create twice that many black and green pest creature tokens with when it dies, we gain a life. One of my favorite cards, Rakdos Charm. Kai, if you're watching this, you know why I love this card. So as an instant, when we can choose one, we can either exile target player's graveyard, destroy target artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. This is for you Cranko players. Next we have Gaze of Granite, which we can pay X, and when we do, destroy each non-land permanent with mana value X or less. Next we have Windgrace's Judgment, which will allow us to get rid of some important stuff on all of our opponent boards. For any number of opponents, we destroy target non-land permanent that player controls. Good old Beast Within, we destroy target permanent. Its controller gets a 3/3 green beast creature token. Next we have Petrify, destroy target artifact or creature, can't be regenerated. Moving on to our land recursion, we have Aftermath Analyst. When it enters, we mill 3 cards, then we can pay 4 to sack it. Return all land creatures from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Titania, Protector of Argoth. When she enters, return target land card from our graveyard to the battlefield. When a land we control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we create a 5/3 green elemental creature token. Splendid Reclamation, return all land cards from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Soul of Windgrace, when he enters or attacks, we put a land from our graveyard onto the battlefield tapped under our control. For green, we could discard a land card to gain 2/3 life. For 1 colorless, 1 red, we can discard a land card and draw a card. For 2 colorless and a black, we can discard a land card, and then it gains indestructible until end of turn, and we tap it. Next we have Groundskeeper. 1 colorless and a green, we return a target basic land from a graveyard to our hand. Finally, World Soul's Rage. We can pay an X for the sorcery, and when we do, it deals X damage to any target. Then we put X amount of land cards from our hand and our graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. There's Hammer of Perforos, just gives our creatures haste. Then we can pay 3 and tap it or sacrifice land. And we create a 3/3 colorless golem enchantment artifact creature token. And finally, the non-basics. It's essentially just a bunch of dual lands. It does come with the waste, which you can guess who that's for. And I replaced this with one of my pre-release cards that I got, which is a Stomping Ground. And then the rest are just basic stuff, Command Tower, a bunch of lands that actually get sacked, so like Riveteer's Overlook, to Tutor for basic. We got Escape Tunnel, which does the same, Rocky Tar Pit, Bojuka Bog to get rid of someone's graveyard. Maestro's Theater does the same thing as Riveteer's Overlook, which I think it's really nice that they added these to the Precon, because this is a really good like double land trigger that we can get. Also gains us life. Got some Evolving Wilds, Weird Landscape, another similar card to the last 2 I just mentioned. Sulphur Springs, pretty good land base. I believe this deck runs 40+ lands, and it's pretty solid out the box. Besides that wastes. Get rid of that wastes. All right, now let's go over some potential upgrades now that I've shown you the deck. All right, starting off on our upgrade list, it would be Zoran Orb, which is a 0-cost artifact, which reads, sacrifice a land, you gain 2 life. This is a very easy way to sacrifice your lands, and to make sure you get sacrifice triggers for cards they have in play that care about sacrifice, or permanence, I mean. Then for the fun of it, I would add Scute Swarm to the deck, just so if we have the combination of Scouring Swarm and Scute Swarm, we're able to make a bunch of creatures. These 2 cards in of itself are already a win con. And then something more recent that just came out with the set, I would put Ice-Till Explorer, which lets you play an additional land on each of your turns, and you can play lands from your graveyard. And it has a landfall trigger, which reads, whenever a land you control enters, you mill a card. This just guarantees that you have those additional lands into play, which can trigger Scute Swarm. And if you mill a card, it happens to be a land, you get your Scouring Swarm trigger, which, you know, can go exponential. And to up our card draw and have a little more fun with the deck when playing with other people, Horn of Greed is a 3-drop artifact. Whenever a player plays a land, that player draws a card. Just lets your opponents have a little bit of card draw, but while us being able to play multiple lands per turn can actually make us draw quite a lot. And finally, I'll leave it off with a devious addition to the deck, which would be a Strip Mine. Strip Mine, it is a land, we can tap it for colorless, and we can also tap it to sacrifice Strip Mine to destroy a target land. If we're able to constantly bring it back and tap it to sacrifice it to destroy land, we can really disrupt the play of some of the players. I will warn you, you might become an enemy at the table if you do that. You certainly would if I was playing against you. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed me going over the new World Shaper Precon deck. I'm really excited to try it out and play it. And if you have your own list of upgrades for it and cards you're taking out, feel free to leave them in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.